Hi, everybody. I'm David Asman. Thanks for joining us tonight. First up, there are few things more sacred than private property. Now, we're not talking here about homes that were bought for flipping with no money down. We're talking about homes that folks sweated to pay for and maintain for decades, sometimes generations. That's why the decision of a town in Connecticut to throw some longtime homeowners out of their homes to make room for a corporate development infuriated most Americans. We were even more infuriated when the Supreme Court sanctified the town's decision in a case called Kelo versus the City of New London. And now it gets even more infuriating. It was just announced that Pfizer, this is the corporation that folks were kicked out of their homes to make room for, is moving out of New London. In other words, folks who had been in the same home for generations had those homes destroyed for nothing. John Stossel has been following this case for years, and he joins us now with the very latest. John?
I mean, it is sad. Think about the waste and disruption here. These politicians in New London with visions of new taxes in their heads went crazy. You know, we'll have more companies like Pfizer. They'll come. We'll put in hotels, shopping malls. It'll be great. But what about the people who lived there?
Suzette Kelo bought this little pink house in New London, Connecticut in 1997. She loved her home and her neighborhood.
We never locked our doors. We took care of each other's families.
She hoped to stay there forever, but there was a hitch.
Government can steal your property, but because government writes the laws, they don't call it stealing. They call it eminent domain.
Traditionally, governments use it to clear space for highways or railroads. But in New London, town officials wanted the space for private development. They said construction would bring in new jobs and more taxes.
More than 5,000 jobs would be created, more than $12.5 million in new local taxes every year.
90 acres of land to bring this whole area back and being economically vital.
New London hired attorney Wesley Horton to defend its redevelopment plan because some people objected. After all, where this development would be is where Suzette and her neighbors lived.
There were people all over Parcel 3 and Parcel 4A. Many of them were tiny.
The city put this notice on Suzette's door explaining that her house was condemned.
We were backed into corners like animals in a corner.
The bulldozers came. 90 families left. Suzette and 6 others refused to leave.
I'm not going anywhere, okay? I'm actually starting to paint the house. They'll have to basically rip my fingers from this porch.
People often fight when governments try to take their homes. When Donald Trump teamed up with New Jersey politicians to take this woman's home because it was in the way of his expanding his casino, I gave him a hard time about it.
You're bullying these people out because they're...
Excuse me, that's wrong. But for you to use the word bully, John, is very unfair. This is a government case. This is not Donald Trump.
Yes, it's Donald Trump. It's you and your cronies in government working together.
For you to call these people cronies is very unfair.
That's not what's happening here?
No, absolutely not. Not at all. And I think it's a pretty sick assumption, and I think it's pretty jaded for you to make it.
Jaded I am, but a court later decreed that Trump had no right to the property.
Any potential public benefit is overwhelmed by the private benefit received by Trump Plaza associates.
The woman got to keep her home. Would Suzette Kelo and her neighbors have similar luck? They protested, hired lawyers, and managed to hold on to their homes for 5 years until Suzette managed to get her case heard by the U.S. Supreme Court.
I was very encouraged by today's argument with the justices.
But months later, her attorney got the verdict.
We got a call that we'd lost by 1 vote, and I think that was when I started screaming. The Kelo decision opened the door for eminent domain abuse all across the country.
Any group of politicians can kick you out of your home.
Well, that's true. But that's true if you want to put up a road, for example. The question is this serving an important public purpose? And we say it is.
It's giving them a lot of power.
Yes, that's true.
There's plenty of open land in America. Let people develop there.
Do you want the developers to let the cities die?
This would kill cities?
Yes, exactly.
But that's just not true. Look what's going on here in Anaheim, California. Here they've built condos, stores, restaurants, all kinds of things, and done it without using government force to take people's property. How'd they do it? You allowed property owners more freedom.
We changed the restrictions on parking. We changed the restrictions on signage. We streamlined the permit process so it was much easier to build there.
Anaheim Mayor Kurt Pringle.
You got rid of the dumb rules.
We gave them more development opportunity by zoning it such that they can build whatever they wanted. The city gave no subsidies. They didn't buy anybody's property.
I hear cities have to do these things.
Well, we didn't, and we have a lot going on without it.
What if people won't sell?
The developer can build around it, which is the case certainly in our city, or the project doesn't get built.
The owner of this McDonald's franchise said, I don't want to move, so he stayed. They built around him.
They didn't want to sell, and that was just fine. The developer had to figure out how to build without taking that property.
This happens many places. Edith Macefield in Seattle turned down $1 million for her home, so the developer is building a health club and grocery store around her. Darlene Dixon in Baltimore also didn't want to sell, so developers built around her townhouse. It works. Things get built. And just this year, while 2 new condo buildings opened their doors in Anaheim, what's been built on that lot in New London where Suzette Kelo's house once stood? Nothing.
The city said they had to tear the houses down because development would happen. Tax revenues, all kinds of cool new things. And yet, this is what they got.
No hotel or upscale housing, no conference center, no nothing.
It's a nice 90-acre pile of dirt. 10 years have gone by. Over $100 million in taxpayer money has been spent there. And what do you have to show for it? Dirt and weeds.
Jeff Benedict wrote this book about Suzette Kelo's little pink house.
This was sold as a way to bring in jobs and tax revenue. How's that working out?
Not only are there no jobs, there's no buildings. There is nothing going on down there.
This are my stairs, and I had a long porch, and this is where the house was.
They didn't have to do this. Occasionally, with growth, we need to take people's land, but we're very, very careful and guarded about why we do it. When you decide that you're going to give some local politician the authority to come into a neighborhood and tell a bunch of people that have lived there for 40, 50, 60 years, we're knocking your house down. And in New London, I don't think anybody thought about that.
And now Pfizer says, we're not going.
We're not going. And now people are thinking about it, at least. And after Kelo, many towns said, oh, great, we can take over property, and there are all these projects going on. But some states have passed laws saying, we don't want that.
You know, I was reminded, because I was reading up on the story, that Sandra Day O'Connor was one of the justices who said no, who was in favor of property rights, who said no to the development in the town's desire. She said, the government now has license to transfer property from those with fewer resources to those with more. Will the fact that Pfizer's pulled out of this affect that at all?
I doubt it. I think they'll say, oh, Pfizer pulled out because of the economy. In our town, we wise planners, we know what's best for, and it's certainly glory for the city fathers to bring in some new shopping mall.
Right. John, stay with us. I want to bring in some people who you saw in that segment. Suzette Kelo and her neighbors' battle to keep their homes is the subject of Jeff Benedict's book, as we saw a little piece of it in John's piece. Little Pink House is the name of the book, a true story of defiance and courage. Jeff joins us now by phone from Virginia, and Dana Berliner is senior attorney with the Institute for Justice and was co-counsel in the Kelo case. She joins us now from Washington, D.C. Dana, when you heard the news that Pfizer, after all this, Pfizer says, so long, we're not going, what'd you think?
Honestly, I thought it was no surprise at all. That project never looked like it was going anywhere, not from the very beginning.
Why not, Dana?
Because from the very beginning, it didn't make any sense economically. Pfizer only did it because they were getting an unbelievably good deal. They got the land for free, and they got huge tax abatements. And they're leaving now that their tax abatements are up.
But when you were pushing the case, didn't you make that case that, you know, of all cases for eminent domain, this is a terrible example of one because there are many reasons why the corporations might not move in?
Oh, absolutely. We presented the court. We said, look, there's not going to be any office buildings here. There's not going to be any housing. The developer itself says there's no market. They're never going to build anything. And the court said, well, they have a plan. There's something written down. I guess that's good enough. And what this shows us is, well, that really isn't good enough.
And what it also shows us is that very often, John Stossel, the big hand of government is wrong. And the little folks who have to suffer from big government intrusion are very often more correct.
Yeah, most of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, the conceit of the anointed is what I call it. And planning is important, done by individuals, but top down, it rarely works.
Jeff Benedict, these are people, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, these are not house flippers, the folks that were kicked out of their house. These are folks who had lived there for years. Some of the folks had seen their children grow up, go to college, sometimes even move back in these homes. These were homes that had personality, that had a soul.
Yeah, in fact, you could take it one step further. There were actually people in that neighborhood who were literally born in those houses. So these were families that had about 100 years of roots there, and it was a big deal to just ask them to uproot and go. And I think when the city, flexed its muscle and said, this is so important, we're going to throw you out of your houses, that's what makes this Pfizer move such a kick in the teeth, because the city planners never anticipated this. Dana said she's not surprised, but the fact is those city planners are shocked right now. They're totally surprised. And that's what's scary is you have people making decisions that affect people's lives that are completely out of touch with what's really going on in these communities. They thought because Pfizer was coming, they were going to save the city. And for Pfizer, it was never about that. It was always about the money.
Well, Dana, does the fact of what happened at Pfizer, is perhaps the only good thing to come out of this is the next case. And there will be another case like this, a case of eminent domain. The lawyers defending private property, defending homeowners, whoever they happen to be, can point to this case and say, look, these people, been in their houses generations, thrown out for nothing. I don't want the same thing to happen to me.
Well, that's absolutely right. And in fact, all of the state Supreme Courts that have looked at these issues since the Kelo decision have decided not to follow it. They've said, maybe under federal law, but we're not letting that happen in our state. And part of the reason, I think, is that they saw what happened.
And
they
John,
saw the Kelo.
Let's tie it into what's happening today, because we have an attack on private property in various forms, whether it's the President of the United States going into a private corporation and saying, I fired the CEO, or tearing up the contracts of bondholders who thought they had secured debt, seeing those agreements torn up. Does this kind of tie in? Is there a grassroots rebellion, maybe represented by Kelo and the reaction to the Supreme Court decision, maybe partly based on what happened with the town hall meetings, against this kind of government intrusion?
I think maybe, and I sure hope so. And I even quarrel with your focusing on how long these people lived there, that they were born there. What does that matter? Private property ought to be private property. And who will improve his property if you think the government might take it sometime?
Well, I hate to say that's a great point for disagreeing with me, but Dana, that is a good point. The fact is you can't qualify private property. The minute you start down on that road of qualifying and saying, well, this private property is worth more than this private property, that's a very slippery slope to go down.
Well, and one of the things we do see is that when cities start threatening eminent domain, there is no development. No one will build, no one will do anything while that's hanging over their head. And if cities really want actual economic development, the best thing for them to do is make property rights safe and otherwise just get out of the way.
All right.
Which Anaheim did. Get rid of the stupid zoning rules. People will build.
Yeah, people will, certainly. And again, a man's home or a woman's home is their castle, and it should ever be so. Jeff Benedict, Little Pink House is the name of his book. Dana Berliner, thank you very much for being here. John Stossel, great to have you a member